Hello, I want to talk about this guy. I'll be talking about socialist theory for a bit, so if that's too boring, just scroll on after you enjoy this cake. This cake was given to me by Third Circle Bakery. She's also the person who made my wedding cake, which is kind of sick. Um, they're all vegan and everything, and they taste bloody delicious. And also, they're genuinely some of the most incredible cakes I've probably ever seen. I'm not really a cake person, but this would probably convince me. Anyways, enough about the cake. Let's talk about Luigi. So, pretty much, I'm going to be talking about and summarizing, I guess, an article written by Trotsky in 1911 called Why Marxists Oppose Individual Terrorism. And I want to preface this by saying it's probably not what you think, but it's pretty important to talk about. And it's also very relevant to this bloke. The article can kind of entirely be summarized by the first sentence of the last paragraph, which is if we oppose terrorist acts, it is only because individual revenge does not satisfy us. So, what he's saying is individual acts are not enough. If we oppose individual acts of terrorism, it's not because of any moral reason or any moral indignation about the value of a human life and all that kind of stuff. It's because it's simply not enough. But let me talk about, the rest of the stuff because it's very important. Trotsky starts the article by saying our class enemies are in the habit of calling us terrorists and whatever. And then he says, they're correct. And I'm going to quote here. If terrorism is understood in this way as any action inspiring fear in or doing harm to the enemy, then of course the entire class struggle is nothing but terrorism. And obviously that's correct. He then says the only question remaining is whether bourgeois politicians have the right to pour out their flood of moral indignation about the proletarian terrorism when the entire state apparatus with its laws, police and army is nothing but an apparatus for capitalist terror. He says that when they call us terrorists, they're trying, whether consciously or not, to give the word a narrower meaning. He says, and I quote, the damaging of machines by workers, for example, is terrorism in this strict sense of the word. The killing of an employer, a threat to set fire to a factory, or a death threat to its owner, an assassination attempt with a revolver in hand against a government minister, all these are terrorist acts in its full and authentic sense. He goes on to say that anyone who has a true idea of the nature of international social democracy opposes this, but in the most irreconcilable way. One of the reasons he gives is that terrorizing with the threat of a strike, or actually conducting a strike, is something that only industrial workers can do. The social significance of a strike depends directly upon, first, the size of the enterprise or the branch of the industry that it affects, and second, the degree to which the workers taking part in it are organised, disciplined, and ready for action. Second, it belittles the roles of the masses. He says, in a strike, so in elections, the method, aim, and result of the struggle always depends on the social role and the strength of the proletariat as a class. Only the workers can conduct a strike. Artisans ruined by the factory, peasants whose water the factory is poisoning, or lumpen proletarians in search of plunder can smash machines, set fire to a factory, or even murder its owner. But only the conscious and organised working class can send a strong representation into the halls of parliament to look out for proletarian interests. However, in order to murder a prominent official, you do not need to have the organised masses behind you. He says, and I think this is quite funny, the recipe for explosives is available to anyone, and also anyone can get a gun, but it takes more than one person to go on strike. I get that a lot of this might be controversial, but hold on to the end because I'm going to disagree with some of this stuff, but only very slightly. Just based on the context of when this was written. Trotsky says, the murder of a factory owner produces effects of a police nature only, or a change in proprietors devoid of any social significance. Whether a terrorist attempt, even a successful one, throws the ruling class into confusion depends on the concrete political circumstances. In any case, the confusion can only be short-lived. The capitalist state does not base itself on government ministers and cannot be eliminated with them. The classes it serves will always find new people, and the mechanism remains intact and continues to function. And this is probably, I guess, the most important part that I want to talk about. And that's the fact that we cannot destroy capitalism. We cannot overthrow capitalism just by killing a few CEOs. We need to do way more than that. We cannot defeat a government by killing a government minister. There needs to be a massive struggle to defeat a government, to defeat a system of capitalism. You can't just kill a person. That's not how it works. And I feel like some of the discourse around what Luigi's done is, we can defeat this. We can overthrow them if we just kill a few CEOs. No, they'll just be replaced. We saw that the United Health CEO was on his way to the annual investors meeting. The investors meeting continued. It was only cancelled an hour after it started. They literally walked over his body and continued the meeting. The cogs of capital continued to roll. He's also going to be replaced. If you murder a government minister, they'll replace that minister with another one. Trotsky says, in our eyes, individual terror is inadmissible precisely because it belittles the role of the masses in their own consciousness. It reconciles them to their powerlessness, and it turns their eyes and their hopes towards a great avenger and liberator who will someday come and accomplish his mission. But as the smoke and the confusion clears away, the panic disappears, the successor of the murdered minister makes his appearance, life again settles into the old rut. The wheel of capitalist exploitation turns as before, and only the police repression grows stronger, more savage, and brazen. And that's absolutely correct, with one exception, and I'll talk about that at the end of this video, because there's something that I slightly disagree there, because that's not the only thing that this particular act accomplished. However, we have seen it in the discourse. People were praising Luigi quite literally as a saint, and I think that's quite funny. But also, we seek this liberator, we seek this individual to come and save us all, and that's kind of what's wrong. Our power comes from us collectively as the masses. We don't need a savior. We are our own savior together. Trotsky writes that the revolution can arise only out of the sharpening of class struggle, and it can find a guarantee of victory only in the social functions of the proletariat, the mass political strike, the armed insurrection, the conquest of state power. Trotsky is not against terrorism. Trotsky is against individual terrorism. He goes on to explain this by saying, there is no need to belabor the point that social democracy has nothing in common with those bought and paid for moralists who, in response to any terrorist act, make solemn declarations about the absolute value of human life. These are the same people who, on other occasions, in the name of other absolute values, for example, the nation's honour or the monarch's prestige, are ready to shove millions of people into the hell of war. Today, their national hero is the minister who gives the sacred right of private property, and tomorrow, when the desperate hand of the unemployed workers is clenched into a fist or picks upon a weapon, they'll start in all sorts of nonsense about the inadmissibility of violence in any form. He then goes on to say that the feeling of revenge that results in these acts of individual terror is relevant and is important, and that we should respect that and acknowledge it. He says, whatever the eunuchs and Pharisees of morality may say, the feeling of revenge has its rights. It does the working class the greatest moral credit that it does not look with vacant indifference upon what is going on in the best of all possible worlds. Not to extinguish the proletariat's unfulfilled feeling of revenge, but on the contrary, to stir it up again and deepen it, and to direct it against the real causes of all injustice and human baseness. That is the task of social democracy. And then he ends with the paragraph that starts with, if we oppose terrorist acts, it's only because the individual revenge does not satisfy us. It's not enough. And it's not because we, oppose violence or whatever when violence is thrust upon us every single day. And it's not because that feeling of revenge should be ignored or anything. It's because that feeling can be harnessed and we can achieve something better from it. For example, a revolution, an organised strike, and a bunch of other things. But I want to talk about the area that I slightly disagree with Trotsky's analysis. So this article was written by Trotsky in 1911, and this context is actually really important. This is a few years before the Russian Revolution, and this is during a period in time where anti-capitalism was not a fringe idea. There were a number of schools of thoughts like socialism, anarchism, and a bunch of other kind of schools of thoughts. There was socialist press throughout the world, and anti-capitalism was not a fringe idea. This was a pretty, well-established school of thought across the world at the time. Trotsky was concerned that, during this uprising of feelings, that individual terror could make us move away from the role of the masses and instead focus on the role of an individual, and then therefore, the revolution of the masses be quelled. And today, I'm sorry to say, but we are genuinely not living in the same circumstances or the same context. There isn't a massive, school of thought about anti-capitalism. These are, unfortunately, fringe ideas. As a result, the outcomes of individual terror is not exactly the same. And we've seen that, and some actual good things have resulted in this act of individual terror. For example, we've seen that the discourse has been, it's not about left and right, it's about us versus them, it's about class. We're seeing people notice that it's the ruling class that holds the power, but we can challenge that power. And some of the good outcomes, good socialist outcomes about this have been, we've seen the trends in like Google Analytics and stuff. Look at the search term for class consciousness. It's almost zero, and then Luigi kills this guy, and now boom, class consciousness is Googled en masse throughout the world. Trotsky was kind of a little bit scared that people would move away from socialism and a mass movement to anarchism or to other kind of alternative to socialism, and that's not a risk that we have in today's society. Any anti-capitalism is a good thing. Obviously, I have my own perspectives on which anti-capitalism is the right one, but the left is not the same as it was in 1911. And we've seen the left grow as a result of this, and I think it's a good thing. I wouldn't encourage people to do individual acts of terror. I would encourage them to join a group that is organised and organising and get involved. Places like Rahu, join the Palestinian protests wherever you can, meet with people, get involved, see what they're trying to do, and join them. We want to avoid making heroes because heroes are not what we need. We can do this ourselves. We don't need individuals to save us. Our power does not come from individuals doing things on their own. Our power comes from us doing things as a group and collectively. That's what they're scared of. They're not really scared of this. The thing that most upsets capitalism is us stopping the flow of capital. Unfortunately, Luigi didn't stop the flow of capital, but he did stop one CEO. And I think that's on the whole a good thing. But my preference would be for us to stop the flow of capital as a group, organised and collectivised. So yeah, a few people have asked like, why haven't I denounced what Luigi did and whatever? And that's because I don't think what he did was entirely bad. I think he helped move the conversation regarding class consciousness, just class warfare and capitalism being a bad thing. I think in terms of the outcomes of what he did, it helped continue a conversation. And I think that's really good and helped progress a conversation. And that's a good thing for us. But I don't think this is the kind of act that we should be leaning into. And that's not because I think violence is bad. Violence is used against us every day. It's not about violence. It's about collectivism and a mass movement and class struggle. And we don't achieve any of those things with just one individual. We achieve that together. That being said, I think stuff like this, the memes and, for example, this cake is very funny. And I think that there's no harm in it really at this point in time. Maybe if it was 1911, different story. It's not. It's 2025. The left is tiny, / in some cases doesn't even exist. I still think that sexualizing him is very weird and whatever. He's hot though. So anyways, yeah, I hope you listened to the end. And if you did, thank you, because it's pretty long and boring and socialist theory and whatever. But yeah, I might do more of that. I might not. We'll see. But if you are buying a cake, I would definitely recommend buying it from Third Circle Bakery because they're genuinely the best cakes. And if you want to support what I do, please feel free to grab some merch. It's in my link tree or join the Patreon or whatever. But don't feel pressured because everything sucks right now and no one can afford anything and our government won't do anything about it. So yeah. Also, you may have seen that we're doing a housing crime scene thingo. So I want to encourage you to pick up some stickers or print off some stickers if you can. They're available at the Victorian Socialist Volunteer Centre. I'll also put a link here. It's at the Pingers for Parliament website. And also, if you do stick up a sticker, please email us a photo of you doing that so we can put it in the gallery and stuff. Because, yeah, we're seeing them around and it's really sick. I just want to put them online. Anyways, love you all. Thanks so much for listening. Happy New Year. Please excuse the cake cutting technique.
Hey,
you can blame that on Sarah.
Speak for yourself. Beautiful. Oh, let's have a look.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, whoopsies.
Oh my god.
Oh, yum.
Oh, yum.
I think it was cookies and cream, I think.
Yeah, it looks like the cookies and cream.
Yeah.
That's what we had on the wedding
so
cake.
Delicious. Yeah, I'm going to actually